But we can't get those things on our own. Raul helped build this organization with the understanding that the diversity of this community, as distinct as the Bogotas of the Bronx, as beautiful as the blossoms of Miami, and as unique as the breakfast tacos here in San Antonio.
And that's right. That's breaking news coming from our very own First Lady, Jill Biden, who basically has said that Hispanics, yes, we are as unique as breakfast tacos. So to break this all down, I have one of my dearest friends, someone who I've been in the trenches with when it comes to Hispanic strategy, outreach, and coalition, Giancarlo Sopo, a Republican media strategist. Giancarlo, which taco are you?
Well, I am a McCormick low sodium, mild taco. And I do have some sauce as well. So that is the taco that I am today. You know, usually they'll call me a Cuban taco.
Oh, tell me about the Cuban taco, because it would have to involve arroz con frijoles negros, I'm assuming.
Yes, and like insane amounts of chicharrón.
Chicharrón is a fried pork. You got to explain it, because that's how I have to explain it to Matt.
Yeah, it's like a pork crackling, like a pork rind.
Yeah. Well, I got to ask you, because, you know, we watched this video. I think it caught all of us a bit off guard, but it really, the insult is even bigger than we all think, right, Giancarlo? Because first of all, it's Jill Biden attending a Latinx Inclusionex luncheon. Yeah. I mean, let's start from there. Let's start from the fact that she's attending this Latinx luncheon, which none of us in any way identify with.
Yeah, no, I mean, Latinx sounds like a male enhancement drug sold at a shady gas station somewhere down in Laredo. It's next to the Spanish fly. That's where you find Latinx. And if it lasts for more than 4 hours, call your doctor.
No, I got to tell you, so we've got the Latinx luncheon. Then she goes on to mess up on using the word bodega, which is a Latin market.
It's a common word. It's also a common word. It's not like we were asking her to say like alcapurria. Bodega is a very common word.
Right. And then on top of that, then she decides to try to connect all of Hispanics together by calling us tacos, right? But so can you explain to our audience why this out of touch administration, beginning with the First Lady, why they continually fail to connect with the Hispanic voter, and why you're going to start seeing more Republicans being able to court the Hispanic voter?
I think it's really interesting, and I think it's something that I've thought about, and you and I talked about this back in 2020, which is that the Biden campaign, it all pretty much started on the Biden campaign. They were so incredibly out of touch with Hispanics, both in their advertising and their outreach. Joe Biden did zero Hispanic outreach until 6 weeks before the election. You remember when he held that rally in Orlando where he came out on stage and played Despacito? So they did all these kind of goofy attempts at outreach, like leveraging celebrities who have not been culturally relevant in years. So the best example of this is that the Democrats, every 2 years, whenever there's a major election, they roll out Eva Longoria. No one named Carmen or Guadalupe has any idea who Eva Longoria is. She is a phenomenon in like for Americans, but most Spanish-speaking Americans have no idea who she is because she's never done any Spanish television, but she also hasn't done like television in over 10 years. So, but the Democrats strut her out every 2 to 4 years as though she was like this major important cultural force among Hispanics. Right. And then they're just tone deaf on everything in the way that they engage Hispanics. I always say like they approach us and they approach Hispanics as though we're victims. They use like this victimhood framework to talk to us. It's extremely condescending and paternalistic. Hispanics aren't victims. No one came to this country to feel like a victim. Hispanics come here to work really hard. They're God-loving people. They like raising families and sending their kids to great schools. Hispanics feel like they can achieve their dreams in the United States. Whenever you look at surveys, Hispanics tend to have like very high levels of patriotism. They believe in the American dream. They believe in police officers and public service. So just the entire general framework for the way that Democrats approach Hispanics just does not work.
And they believe in border security, too. We know this for a fact, and they're seeing the chaos that's happening on the border, the fact that the drug cartels and the human traffickers are in charge of the border. They don't like it. They don't like it because so many of these Hispanics came here legally. They waited in line to come into the United States, whether it was fleeing economic persecution, political persecution, for a better life. But I got to ask you this, Giancarlo. It seems that the Democrats, there's like a bullying tactic happening. They want to force the term Latinx down our throats. They want us to alter our language, our culture, in order for us to basically be in line with them as they try to, I think, redefine what the Hispanic culture looks like. And I do think that there's a huge rejection coming from the Hispanic community when they're seeing the fact that these Democrats are for defunding the police, that these Democrats are supportive of critical race theory, of indoctrination of our children when it comes to the transgender agenda, and literally trying to confuse children as early as the age of 5. And so I feel that there's this rejection happening from the Hispanic community saying, I don't feel comfortable where you all are going from a cultural standpoint. And on top of that, the economic stress that so many of these families are feeling right now. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, it's really bizarre because I think by now everyone knows that no Hispanic identifies as a Latinx, and even Democratic polls show that most Hispanics find the term offensive, that they find it a very strange cultural imposition. But I think the progressive Latinos, the people who you and I would call Latinxes, they're not Hispanics, they're Latin. That's how they identify as Latinxes. Right. All three of them, they want to continue trying to like impose that term on Hispanics because in their mind, they think that if they're successful at least getting Hispanics to talk about that term and to, in the long hopes of adopting it, that it can kind of like rewire how Hispanics view language and culture and issues such as gender identity as well. It's really bizarre. I have never seen people be so indifferent toward how minorities feel about anything. I think like if we knew that, hey, look, 98% of African Americans or Asian Americans do not like this label or don't identify with it, I can't think of any major corporation or group that would continue trying to impose it on those groups. But oddly enough, when it comes to Hispanics, it's so condescending. It's almost like they're telling us, no, guys, don't worry, we know better than you.
Right.
And I think most Hispanics find it very off-putting.
So does Biden change Hispanic Heritage Month, which happens September 15th through October 15th, to Latinx Heritage Month? I mean, is that what's going to come next from this crazy administration? I mean, what can we expect to come from the administration? Do they change their ways? Obviously, we saw Jill Biden apologize for these comments. I actually thought, I was shocked when I saw that even the National Association of Hispanic Journalists, they came out and had to pretty much put her in her place. It's been interesting to watch that even those groups that are left, not many of them are backing her up. She did issue an apology. Does this clean up the mess for the Biden administration?
I don't think so because, as both you and I know, personnel is policy in Washington. And if you look at where the Democrats pull their Hispanic talent from, they tend to be from these, typically very liberal young staffers who work at immigration advocacy groups, right? Meanwhile, like conversely, like Hispanics tend to pull talent from South Florida, from South Texas. So and I are good examples of this. We grew up in Miami. We have family there. We visit there all the time. We have a lot of very strong cultural ties to the community. So, if somebody tried to run something by us, we would know exactly what's up, right? Yes, or like our good friend and colleague Macarena. She is from South Texas. Now she's running Hispanic comms at the RNC for the entire state. So we just recruit talent very differently. I don't think this is going to get any better for the Democrats because they have people around them that continue reinforcing these worst tendencies, right? I mean, look, they went to a group called Unidos US, formerly known as the National Council of La Raza, where you would expect that people would have a certain expertise on Hispanic outreach and on the culture. Yet it was Unidos US that coined that conference, Latinx Inclusion X, or however it is that you pronounce that word. And it's because they work in like these little bubbles, and they reinforce these very woke tendencies that are completely disconnected from your average Hispanic. You know this, your average Hispanic family after a long day at work wants to come home, have their tamales, their arroz con frijoles, their rice and beans, and just watch like novelas or Netflix. Nobody wants to be woke-splained how to speak Spanish again.
No way. I agree.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. There was a New York Times story that came out that talked about the rise of the far-right Latina. I thought that was a fascinating story because first of all, they're trying to tag these congressional members. Some of them are congressional candidates that are running as being far right. Far right, why? Because they're pro-life? Because they're pro-America? Because they're pro-family? I mean, how can the left get away with trying to label these women as far right when, in essence, what they're standing for is what I think the vast majority of Hispanics stand for?
Yeah, I thought that story was really funny because it's written from the vantage point of, say, someone who has not really been exposed to Hispanics before, or rather Hispanic conservatives, and they're absolutely shocked to learn that they exist. So, the writer of that article, she's a Hispanic reporter, but she's from Southern California,
right,
where most Hispanics tend to be very Democratic. So it's almost like she goes to South Texas and she is stunned to learn that there are Hispanics who attend church regularly, who pray before dinner, who have pro-life views, who support a strong border. I think there's just like this really strong disconnect between these elite East Coast media circles and where the vast majority of Hispanics live and our cultures, which do tend to be more traditional. I've been to South Texas. I was there on Election Day with Mayra Flores and with Cassie Garcia. And, we go to restaurants and you do see people praying before their dinners. People have large families. Hispanics are just like any other Americans. They want what's best for their children and they want better lives. And progressives seem to insist on wanting to impose this very extreme left-wing ideology, which has nothing to do with our cultures. Even a lot of Hispanic Democrats find this offensive.
Yep. Well, I got to tell you, on Twitter, you had Giancarlo, not a taco, which I loved.
Yep.
And then you took a picture of 3 tacos. We're going to put this up on the screen where you said, "Good morning, my amiga-nex." I don't even know how to say that.
Amigexes.
Amigexes. It sounds like your ex-girlfriend, Giancarlo. Mi amixes.
Yeah.
Don't mind me. I'm just being unique. And I think it's so telling. It's good that we can laugh about this, which I love, and we have to do have a good laugh during these times. But, mine came out and I said, I just want to clarify to Flotus is that although I am a proud Cuban American, I do not identify as a taco. Okay. First of all, I would probably more identify with the palomilla steak and arroz con frijoles, which is what I would like. But what I love about this discussion is the fact that the Hispanic community is so diverse and it brings so much to this great country. And it's true. It's because we love America. We want America to be the most successful country. And we are humbly and eternally grateful for having the opportunities that we have here in America to be able to do such great things and to help build this grassroots movement. But here's, I want to get your prediction and your final thoughts on what you're going to see come the midterm elections and with the Hispanic vote. And also, can the Republicans really strengthen their ties with the Hispanic community to make it into a long-lasting relationship?
Yeah, so I think Republicans are well positioned to actually exceed the historic high water mark that we've had with Hispanics, which was the Bush 2004 number, where I think he got about 44 to 45% of the vote. I think we're on track to match that. But I think you're right. It's not a given. It's not a slam dunk. We need to see a lot more outreach to our communities. I was a little disheartened by some of what happened in California last year with the recall. I think that the local operatives there dropped the ball with their Hispanic outreach. There's a lot of opportunity because there's so much dissatisfaction with Joe Biden. Joe Biden is polling in the low 30s. with Hispanic Americans. That is, that is unprecedented for a Democratic president. So the opportunity's there. We just need to do really great outreach. And I'm seeing a lot of really great work by some of our friends at the RNC. But, I think we need all hands on deck. Right. At the state and local level across the country.
Great point. And I do think we're making huge impacts in the state and local levels, and really encouraged to meet all these congressional candidates who are Hispanic, who have decided to run, who have a great story to tell and could possibly win in November. Giancarlo Sopo, always a pleasure to have you on. You're such a dear friend and one of the best, I would say, strategic minds in the political space. So we're just thrilled to have you on CPAC Now.
Thank you so much, my fellow taco. It was great to see you.
Until we meet again, bring the salsa and the guac. Take care.
Bye.
And we'll be right back with Jim McLaughlin, who's going to break down the poll numbers coming up next. Welcome back to America Uncanceled. I'm on my own today. Matt's traveling. He's doing a lot of work, not only in Oklahoma, but in Kansas City. As we know, there's the Valley Them Both Amendment, which is going to be voted on August 2nd, to basically put safeguards around what's happening there, as they've gone very extreme on the abortion issue. So we'll keep you updated on that. But my next guest, great guy, someone who I've worked closely with, former Trump, or I should say Trump pollster, not former, Trump pollster, Republican strategist, CPAC board member, Jim McLaughlin. Thank you so much for joining me on America Uncanceled.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. I'm looking forward to it, Mercy.
I know. We were just talking about, we're also looking forward to CPAC Texas. It's going to be huge. We've got President Donald Trump coming, as well as the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. We have just a huge group of folks that are going to be joining us on the CPAC stage, and you'll be there too.
Yes, and let me tell you, it's going to be a great party. I always tell everybody it's like conservative spring break, and it brings together all generations. And I'll tell you something, the thing that I always love best about the CPAC is all the young people.
Yes.
You have all these enthusiastic, young, inspirational young people. And I think, this year, especially in Texas, it's going to be bigger and hotter than ever.
I know, and it will be. And I think for the most part, as we're going into the countdown to the midterms, that's one of our bigger themes that we're going to be watching at CPAC. And we're going to have some of these congressional and senatorial and gubernatorial candidates speaking on stage because we got to make sure that the grassroots are activated, ready to go for the early voting and for the November election. But I want to talk with you and analyze and break down these poll numbers that we're watching right now happening. I mean, Biden poll numbers are in the tank. We're seeing the fact that only 37.8% of Americans approve of Joe Biden's job performance. We're also seeing that this is crazy. I don't think I've seen these numbers. 17% believe that the country's on the right track. I'd love to meet one of those 17%ers. What is happening?
Oh, these are the worst numbers we've ever seen. And you and I have worked together for a long time. And I work for Matt, going back to the 94 landslide when we worked together and we brought a congressman from out of nowhere that wasn't on anybody's radar screen, Todd Tiahrt, back in those days. And the numbers that we're seeing for Joe Biden at this point in time, significantly worse than what we saw for, say, Bill Clinton in 1994 or Barack Obama in 2010. Like those kind of red waves and momentum back then, they kind of came late during the election cycle. But here, we've basically had Joe Biden upside down since last August. By the way, before the Afghanistan debacle, he was upside down. Why? Because the American people are much smarter than the Democrats and the mainstream media give them credit for. They were seeing all the problems they were having already with inflation going back to last summer. And that was back when, Joe Biden and the White House and the Democrats were telling us there wasn't any inflation problem. So his numbers are a disaster right now. And that's why you're seeing all these Democrats, candidates across the country running away from Joe Biden.
What I'm also hearing is that it's the cultural issues that the Democrats are focused on, in addition to just climate change. I mean, obviously they're honing in and they're thinking that the Roe v. Wade ruling is going to really motivate their base to come out in the midterm elections. But there seems to be a discrepancy because it seems that inflation and the economy are the two top issues when it comes to where the American people think that the administration should focus on. Biden is trying to shift and in essence talk about the economy more, but he's not making any inroads because you're seeing 80% of Americans say that the economy is getting worse. Is there any way for President Biden and the Democrats to salvage their message?
Yeah, they've got to start succeeding. That's their big problem. And again, we saw this happening last summer when his numbers went upside down because he was failing. And that's a big problem. The Democrats, and they're again, their allies in the media are saying, there's going to be all these people that are going to come out and, because of the Roe versus Wade decision. And we all know there's been a ton of misinformation about what that means. But you look in the surveys I've seen since then, it's basically mid-single digits are telling you abortion is the most important issue. We're seeing in surveys, sometimes at least half, sometimes even 2/3 of the voters are telling us it's the economy, it's inflation, it's pocketbook economic issues. And the big advantage that Republicans and conservative candidates especially have on these issues is they view the Republicans as being much better as the ones that can deal with these issues right now, the issues that people really care about. The Democrats, they seem to think that they can win these elections by talking about things like abortion or January 6th or, more gun control. And it just shows how out of touch they are with average Americans right now, because that's not what the voters are really focused on.
So let me ask you, Jim, because talk about out of touch. We saw Jill Biden basically make this, what I find just a horrible comment in her speech. I just can't believe that it even got through the speech writing process in saying that us Hispanics, we're just as unique as tacos, which I couldn't believe that. First of all, she would say something like that. Secondly, she's saying it at a Latinx luncheon, Inclusion X luncheon. They're adding all these X's where the Latinos are saying, I don't even connect with you people when you use the term Latinx. And then we've seen Hispanics, basically about 54% of Hispanics disapproving of Joe Biden's performance. Walk me through where this stands with Hispanic voters. Can Republicans really make the inroads with the Hispanic community?
Last February in Orlando at CPAC, I predicted from the stage at CPAC, Republicans were going to win among Hispanic voters. Not do well. I predicted they were going to win because we've seen it in Florida. We've seen it in Florida where guys like President Trump, Ron DeSantis, Rick Scott, they've been getting 45, 46, 47% of the Hispanic vote down in Florida. President Trump against Joe Biden in the last election got 41%, according to the exit polls, of Hispanic voters in Texas. And when Jill Biden makes a comment like that, it just shows how truly out of touch they are among Hispanic voters. And you look at the conventional wisdom was that, Hispanic voters are going to like basically Joe Biden's open borders policies. Hispanic voters hate it.
That's right.
Because they came here, as you know better than anybody, Mercedes, Hispanic voters are coming here for the American dream. That's why they come here. They come here for a better life. They put their heads down. They work so hard. They just want their kids to get a good education. They want to be safe. They want to be able to go to church on Sunday. And yet the Democrats and the radical left is stopping them from being able to do those kinds of things that they came to this country for. And it's literally backfiring on the Democrats right now.
And I mentioned this earlier, but the Democrats are really trying to bully their way in trying to change the Spanish language, in trying to force this sort of gender confusion into, the lives of our children. And it really doesn't work. I mean, I got to tell you, and then they don't get they don't get it. They're like, how can the economy be so bad? How can prices be so high? And you have a president that's really barely addressing the issue, trying to make excuses. In their minds, in the Democrats' minds, the economy is doing great. I mean, how has this backfired?
And by the way, you're making a great point on the whole Latinx issue. Is we asked it in a survey among Hispanic voters. You know how many said they wanted to be called Latinx? 2%.
Wow. Yeah.
2%.
Yeah.
We've talked about it with Hispanic voters in focus groups in Spanish. They view it as being insulting when people start using the term Latinx, because to them, it's basically a bunch of these white elitist progressives that are forcing their views on their culture. And again, it's not why they came to America. They come to America for liberty and freedom.
Right. Let me ask you. So the Democrats don't really want Joe Biden for the 2024 ticket. There is this idea of what's going to happen there. You saw the New York Times bring up an article basically saying that, they're concerned about the president's age and his ability to really serve out his term and run again. But it looks like the Biden camp, according to the vice president, border czar, Kamala Harris, that they're running again, and they're going to look to announce as early as the end of this year. Do you think that the Democrats, will there be other candidates, do you think, that are going to be running on the Democrat ticket against Joe Biden?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question at the end of the day. And I don't think he's going to run for re-election. He's failed so badly. And look, as we all know, the New York Times, and I'm sorry, I hate to say this, as somebody who used to grow up, I remember my family reading the New York Times. It's nothing more than a left-wing blog. Right. So what happens is when the New York Times is basically trashing Joe Biden, you notice what they said. It wasn't really about policy, that's what Joe Biden's biggest negatives are, the failures when it comes to his issue agenda. Mm-hmm. They were saying, he's just simply too old. That's why we're not going to run him again. They're trying to make excuses for why the left has failed when they're in charge of everything right now. But I don't think there's any question. They're all lining up right now. You see, Gavin Newsom, and you see, Phil Murphy in New York. Bill de Blasio has even talked about it. I mean, they're all out there. They're all circling. And I think the person he's got to worry about most is Kamala Harris. And the only thing that's protecting him up to this point is Kamala Harris is more unpopular than he is. I mean, after all, she's done such a great job on the border, being that quote unquote border czar.
Let me turn to the Republican field. Obviously, there are the murmurs and, mutual friends of ours who looking to see when President Trump announces. I know that there's a lot of excitement around that. But we're looking at the poll numbers. I've seen them all over the place. I've seen 70% of the Republicans want Trump to run. 84% would support Trump. But then you read a lot of the media narrative saying, wait a second, no, Trump is underwater in terms of the poll numbers. How can we make sense of it all?
Yeah, and look, these are the same polls that said Hillary Clinton was going to blow out President Trump back in 2016. They're also the same polls that said Joe Biden was going to win in a blowout, and we all know 42,000 votes in Wisconsin, Arizona, and Georgia, and we would have had, President Trump again.
Right.
So look, I think first of all, I take President Trump at his word when he says, what's he focused on? He wants to put a check and balance on Joe Biden's presidency.
Right.
And he wants to win back the House and the Senate. And you can see by how active he's been in these primaries, how important that is, because he's seen the destruction of his agenda, which obviously served the American people. And I tell everyone, look, at the end of the day, President Trump is going to tell us what he's going to do when President Trump is ready to tell us what to do. But I think the beautiful part is, and this is where, again, the Republicans and the conservative movement have a big advantage over the Democrats. We have a bench. You've got these Democrats are running around. They're talking about, Gavin Newsom. I mean, what he's going to do to the rest of America, what he's done to California. the homeless capital of the world, where you can't even go out and walk around on the street. They pay the highest taxes in America, et cetera. And you look at, we have so many terrific candidates on our side of the aisle talking about running for president. Obviously, we have Ron DeSantis. We've got Nikki Haley. We've got Mike Pompeo. We got people like Rick Scott, Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz down the list. We have some great, great candidates, and we have a deep bench. And by the way, that's the great part about CPAC, is you want to meet the bench up close and personal, go to CPAC. You'll see them there.
Go to CPAC and you'll see Jim as well. Are we doing the straw poll in Texas, by the way?
Yes.
Oh, great.
Matt told me we're doing it. Whatever Matt says, it
goes.
goes.
Excellent. So, of course, I mean, what a great salesperson for CPAC. Come join us August 4th through the 7th. It's going to be a fabulous, fabulous event. We have Sean Hannity going, Glenn Beck, Steve Bannon. The list goes on and on. We're so excited for Texas. It will be a hot one, but at least we'll be indoors, so it won't be too bad. And, of course, we've got President Donald J. Trump. Who knows? Maybe he'll announce at CPAC. I doubt it, but it would be fun, wouldn't it, Jim? Well, Jim McLaughlin, thank you so much. I always love your insight. And obviously, the fun thing about polls is that it talks about trends and where the American people are, and it's always shifting, right?
Oh, that it is. And you know what? The biggest mistake folks make when it comes to polls, they insult the intelligence of the American people. In spite of what the media and the Democrats are trying to tell them right now, they know what's going on out there.
So true, so true. And you're one of the most trusted pollsters. Thank you so much for joining me on America Uncanceled. Jim McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mercy. Look forward to seeing you in Dallas.
Great. See you then.
Take care. Bye-bye.
And thank you all for watching tonight. What a great show. And we'll be back tomorrow. And remember to follow us at CPAC, at Mercedes Schlapp, at M Schlapp. There's so much going on. We'll keep you up to date on what's happening here in the swamp and across the country. God bless and good night.